my channel. In today's video we're just going to keep going towards the back of our fox's head. Probably just get the ears done in this part, but we'll see how much we are able to do. Everything you need is listed below. If you've got any questions, do let me know. You'll be able to find all the resources on my website, on my Facebook group. So we're going to start with the ear that's behind this larger one. And I'm going to start off with the ivory as my base layer. So I'm just going to lift this graphite. And this ivory is in that second triangle here that's going on here. So I'm going to come across along this edge. I want to make sure that that graphite is completely lifted. I'm going to come in with the ivory about halfway across this triangle section and up here as well. And then obviously I'm blending it downwards where the ear is going to connect to that head. Well, the fur on this head is going to be in front of this ear, but that is fine. We'll come to that when we get to it. And then I'm going to take my cinnamon first, very light pressure, following that fur direction. I do want a pink undertone to my fur. And I'm also going to take my light yellow ochre because it is a very yellow tone along here. And bring in that light yellow ochre. And then I'm going to take my brown ochre and I'm going to add in some little details now. So I'm going to make sure that it's a nice sharp pencil and that my fur strokes are going in the correct direction of the fur. We're going to do the same thing once we've done this with the brown ochre with the burnt ochre. So I'll get the burnt ochre, and that's over the top, and this is going to really bring in that orange tone. Now I'm not focusing too much on details because this ear is slightly out of focus and I want to kind of keep that effect in my work, so I'm not going to focus too heavily on loads and loads of details on this ear. Okay, as we come into this corner where it's going to blend into that black tip, just going to bring a bit more brown ochre. And then I'm going to get my gold. And I'm going to take that gold and just start blending over that brown ochre. And it's going to give us that nice mid-tone that we want to start blending these two areas together. And then I'll go over the top of that again with that brown ochre. Okay, then I'm going to take my warm grey one. And that warm grey one is just going to line this side of the ear now, and this is where we're going to start getting some of that darker fur showing through. Blending over that bit of ivory there. And I'm also going to take my ivory and just blend that little edge in a bit more as we build up that base layer. Okay, I then want my burnt umber. And I'm going to start bringing in the burnt umber along here. So this is just going to start adding that base tone to that darker bit of fur, which I'm not going to go black. We're going to go for like a darker grey tone, darker greyish brown tone. And with this burnt umber, we're going to bring it up along the side of that ear there as well. I feel like that orange yellow area needs to come down a bit more. So the light yellow ochre and then the burnt ochre. Just going to bring it a bit further down. Okay, and then back in with that burnt umber. Okay. And then I'm going to take my warm grey 5 and we're going to come up the side of this ear and make sure you're getting some little tapered strokes so you get that soft edge on the edge of that ear. And then you can bring that warm grey 5 in. And I'm just going to take that burnt umber. Right. Back to my brown ochre. And the burnt ochre. Okay, I am going to take my slice tool again. So I do think, as much as I'm trying not to use it, it's definitely needed with this portrait. And I'm just going to bring in some of those looser, lighter hairs over that darker area here. And then I can go over the top of all this with the warm grey one. And then where I've made those darker marks, I'm just going to bring that warm grey 5 up here. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'm going to take my gold again. Blend it over that warm grey 5. And then my burnt ochre. And then back to that burnt umber. So it's just a bit of back and forth while I'm building up the tonal value that I want. Like so. And then the ivory. And again, just that slice tool, just some little lighter hairs. Going over that ear. Okay. I'm now going to take my warm grey 1 and cover the rest of this base layer. Rest of this ear with this as a base layer. And we'll work on top of this base layer. So first of all, I'm going to go back to my warm grey 2. And the warm grey 2, we're just going to darken this little curved section here. Again, a few little longer hairs coming off the edge of this ear. It's curving down. Taking my light yellow ochre. And then over the top of all that, my cinnamon. Okay. Now taking my beige red over the top of all of this warm grey 1. And we're just going to build up that fur direction ever so slightly. And then I've got the warm grey 2. And remember, I'm coming out from that area of colour we've already got laid down. Just building up. In here. And then I'm going to take the cinnamon. Again, it's nice and sharp. And I'm creating some of those softer edges at the side there. Back to my slice tool. I'm just going to bring in some of those hairs. And then the warm grey 1. So it's not the most detailed ear. Back to the burnt ochre. And that's okay. It's slightly out of focus. We want our focus to be on this ear that we're going on to next, rather than this one. The burnt umber, and I'm just going to very lightly draw in some of those little details that we've got going on here, and again very lightly down this side. And then the cinnamon over the top in this corner. Okay, and then I'm just going to take my warm grey one, once again making sure it's nice and sharp, and just bring that grey tone in. Back to my light yellow ochre, and now with this I'm just going to bring in some little details over the top there. Okay, so we need to just connect this ear to our little bit of head. So I'm going to get my in this corner we've got a warm grey one, so I'm going to get my warm grey one here. Again, I'm making sure that it's going in that direction of the fur within that ear. And then I've got the ivory for the actual part of the head that we've got to just draw in. Okay, so I'm going to take my beige red first over the top. Sorry, I keep holding too many pencils in my hand. So that's the beige red. Across all of this area that we've just drawn in. Sorry about that shadow. I'm trying to move my studio lights. It's not as bad. But... Right, and then the light yellow ochre over the top. And then I'm going to take my burnt ochre as well. Very lightly, and just blend from the head that we've already drawn in into that fur. And then the beige red, because we've got that fur coming up and round here. My burnt ochre, once again, just little details. And then the cinnamon just kind of brings everything together nicely with that cinnamon. Alright, that's looking good. So we are gonna keep moving around our fox's head. So I'm gonna take the ivory, again lifting some of that graphite. I'm just gonna bring in this little bit of the head before we move on to that other ear. Okay, so ivory is the base layer. Again, I'm going to use cinnamon, and I'm again making sure my fur lines and direction that I'm drawing in is the same as the reference photo, because it is curving around our fox's head. We really want to capture that look. Okay, and then we're going to take our burnt ochre very lightly, because it's a very light pressure, very light colour as we come up the head. But again, building up some tones in our fur. So you can see how we've already got that pink undertone and we've got our orange tone showing through now. Now, as we come up the face of our fox, across here, it's very yellow in tone. So I'm going to take my Naples Yellow. I'm just going to, again, follow the fur direction and just bring in a layer of our Naples Yellow, sorry. And this will help us get that nice yellow tone, especially when we bring in the burnt ochre again and start bringing in more clumps of fur. You see how yellow that looks already? It's really nice. Okay, I'm then going to go back to my cinnamon, and I'm just going to start bringing in details. So my cinnamon's nice and sharp, and I'm just going to bring in some little fur details. So I'm leaving gaps between each little clump of lines that I'm drawing in, and this is just going to help us create that look of the clumpy fur as well as allowing that yellow to show through the fur. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the burnt ochre. Now you don't need to apply this burnt ochre in the same places as the cinnamon, so don't just directly go over the cinnamon. Make sure it's going in the same direction, make sure you've got those gaps, but have it in separate areas, and you can see it just looks more realistic. And you're just going to create more clumps of this fur, more tonal contrast, and it'll just help it look realistic. And we can go over areas that we've already drawn in with that burnt ochre. Okay, I'm gonna now take my terracotta, and we're just gonna come back to where we've got this eye. I'm just gonna bring in that terracotta, following that eyelid. And just blend that out a little bit more. A little bit in there. Okay. And I'm going to bring this terracotta, just keeping it blended so that it all looks smooth and like this colour is just naturally there. Okay. The little fox is coming to life now. Just going to take my warm grey one in here a little bit more. It's a bit lighter in tone. Right, and my burnt ochre here. So obviously over here we've got a lot of whiskers going on, and I think I'm going to add my whiskers in. So I'm going to get my burnt umber, sorry, and I'm going to just bring in some of these darker whiskers. So again, lighter pressure, just confidence, and then if it's not as dark as you'd like, you can just very gently go over. And I've got one coming up from there, and then if I just move you down a little bit, I've got one coming from here which is quite tall. It goes up as tall as that ear. Okay, and then we also have one here. And just by adding in these whiskers, we're starting to bring some character to our little fox, and it just adds more life to her. Just got my warm grey too, and I'm going to do the same along the eyebrow here. So I've got a whisker there. And I'm lifting pressure off the pencil as I get to the ends of those whiskers. And I'm just going to bring there. Okay, so we've got some little whiskers going in now. Right, so to this other ear. Ivory as our base layer. And I'm just going to start from this corner of the ear. So I'm going to take my light yellow ochre. Again, I'm looking where that fur direction is going. Right, so we've got this little bit of fur that needs to be behind the face first. I'm taking this light yellow ochre up to that little line that I've erased very lightly. And I know that this bit is face. Bring that down a little bit more. And the bit with the yellow ochre, light yellow ochre, is the ear. So it's this area that I want to work on with the ear first. And then I'm going to take my terracotta in this corner, very lightly, again going in that direction of the fur. And then blending outwards. When I say blending outwards, light pressure as you go out into that yellow ochre area, and then take that light yellow ochre over the top So then I've got my light flesh beige red, sorry. Light flesh beige red. It changed its name, so you may, if you've got some older pencils, it'll say light flesh. But this is beige red now. Over the top. And then I'm going to take my burnt ochre as well, very lightly. Just blending outwards. And what I'm doing, where it connects to the head, I'm just going to bring some of that pencil, almost like I'm drawing underneath that fur, like we've done before. And then blend that burnt ochre outwards. So the top of this fur is very light, top of the head is very light, so I'm going to take my beige red, light flesh. I don't know why I'm calling it light flesh at the moment. Beige red, and then the warm grey one over the top of that. And then got my burnt ochre again from the top of this head, just blend outwards into that lighter area. And then I'm going to take my warm grey one once again over the top to blend. And then you can take your slice tool if you really want and just bring in some really nice lightness over the top. You can see it just brings out, this is adding even more depth to our fur just by removing colour. We're going back to that base layer, which is really light. Okay, so we can start coming up our ear. So I'm just going to lift this graphite again. And I'm going in with the ivory along this edge. Okay. Okay, so with the ivory, I'm actually just going to bring it all the way down this ear. I'm not going right up to that graphite because I've not erased it, but gives me an idea of how far down I need to go with this. Okay, back to our cinnamon, and I'm just going to start bringing in cinnamon along our ear. And up, just sort of along this edge of the ivory that we've just drawn in, and the beige red. And I'm just coming back in with the cinnamon on the bottom of this ear. I just want to bring the cinnamon a bit higher up. And then I'm going to take my Naples Yellow again, because remember we've still got that nice yellow tone going on. And bring that over the cinnamon here. Blending into what's already been done. And then just blending over the top. Okay. And then I'm going back to my cinnamon, and I'm just going to start very lightly. I'm not pressing hard, but I'm just bringing that cinnamon up the ear. A bit darker down here, and it needs to blend into this area. And look at it, yeah. So I'm just going to bring that cinnamon over here a bit more. Okay, then the burnt ochre. Okay. Right, I'm now going to take my warm grey 2 and we're going to bring that up this ear as well. And again, you can see that I'm constantly stopping and I'm just checking my reference photo for that fur direction. This ear is going to be more in focus, so we really want to capture that fur direction. And again, I'm creating some little soft lines coming off of that ear. Give it that soft, fuzzy look that we're going for. Okay, then the burnt ochre, very light. We don't want this ear to be orange, but we just want a hint of this colour coming through. And then I'm going back to my gold. Now, as we start building up this area of the ear, it's going to be going into our greys and our browns maybe. So I'm going to use this gold just as a way to start getting that transition. And you can bring it into that ear a little further. Very light pressure. I'm not pressing hard at all. So I do think we'll do another fox again in the future. Not straight away. Do some other drawings first. But I'll do one on a bigger scale than what I've got mine at. I've then got my warm grey 1. And I'm just going over the top where I've got that gold. Okay, right, just had to move it over a little bit just so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to get my putty eraser again and just erase the top of that ear. So we're going to start coming into this shape of the top of the ear. So ivory again is the base layer. So I've lifted, when I'm lifting the graphite, I'm lifting it so it's very, very light. I can still see it, but it's very, very light. And that's going to come down about here. And this is just the ivory. Like so. Right. Going in with the cinnamon. Very lightly. I'm not pressing hard at all. I just want a hint of some of these colours. Again, creating that soft edge. So I'm just tapering my strokes, making sure that it goes over that edge. Give us some nice soft lines. Following the fur direction. Like so. And then I'm going to go to my burnt ochre. Build up again, more colour. It's all about building up a nice depth to our fox's ears. And then we're going to take our brown ochre and curving, remember curving around this ear. It's a 3D ear, it's got a nice curve to it. And I'm doing this with the brown ochre now. And it's going to come down this side as well with the brown ochre. Okay, and then the gold. Over the top. Right, now we do have some darker bits of fur showing, so I've got my burnt umber. I'm not going to press too hard, but I'm just going to bring in the details with the brown burnt ochre, burnt umber, sorry. I'm just recovering from another migraine, so words are getting a bit jumbled still. It's kind of a side effect, I guess you'd say. Okay, like so, and then I'm going to take my warm grey 1 over the top here. And I'm also bringing that warm grey 1 down this side here. So you can see we're starting to really get a nice shape to this second ear. Sorry, it's not in focus. There you go. So you're getting a nice second shape to this ear. Back to the burnt ochre. Just want to bring this back in down here, and I'm going to go over this burnt ochre with my gold. A bit more on there, and then I'm just going to take my ivory over the top of all of this. Back to my burnt umber, just to bring in some of those little details again. Just to darken it up, because remember when we've burnished with like the ivory and the warm grey, just lighten it up ever so slightly. Okay, right, let's keep coming down this ear. So back to the putty eraser. And my ivory along this edge of the ear. And then I'm just going to lighten it and then get my warm grey 1. Is that right? Let me just... Yeah, it's okay. Warm grey 1, making sure I hadn't taken it too far. And just apply that as the base layer next to the ivory. And you can go over that with the ivory, but we get that nice little look to our ear. I'm then going to take my light yellow ochre. Now remember, it's curving round this ear, so I'm doing just little curved strokes with this light yellow ochre, blending it down into that warm grey area. And then the cinnamon. So everything's about making sure it all looks smoothly blended together. Okay. And then I'm just going to take my burnt ochre along the edge and just gently blend outwards. Okay, so we just need to blend these two areas together. So I'm just going to take my cinnamon, blend it a little bit into there, and then I'm going back to my gold. And I'm just going to very lightly bring that gold down into this little area and just taper it off. Just so it all looks like it's one part of the ear and then the ivory over the top. Okay, so you can see it just blends nice and smoothly together. So along this side of the ear we've got some darker bits of fur again. So I'm just coming in with a burnt umber along this little edge and then along the actual ear. Very lightly, I'm not pressing hard, but you can just see it just starts to bring in that little darker bits of fur. And then you can just blend outwards and blend it downwards. Remember to always blend both ways, especially when you've already got colour on the paper. You want it to blend nicely together. And downwards here. Okay, I'm just going to take my burnt ochre, just blend it downwards. Okay, I'm really liking this ear so far. So back with the putty eraser, I'm just going to lift some of that graphite, and I'm actually going to use my warm grey 1 this time as the base layer. Okay, that's the warm grey 1, and then I'm going to take the cinnamon. I'm just going to start to bring in some of the cinnamon. Again, blending into what we've already got drawn up. I'm just going to cover all of this warm grey 1 area very lightly. I'm not pressing hard. You don't need to press hard, you just want that subtle colour. I'm going to get the beige red, which has gone there, it's underneath papers. Okay. Oops. Okay, oh sorry, I don't know why it keeps going in and out of focus. Let me move that. Okay, hopefully you can see that. And then my warm grey 2, and with the warm grey 2 I'm just going to add a little bit of detail, so pressing a little harder, darkening some of these areas up a little bit, not too much. And I'm just going to get my burnt ochre as well, because we need to blend this part of the ear downwards. And as we come down this ear, again, we're getting a little bit of burnt ochre in this little corner. And then I'm just going to take my ivory, and that'll just give us that nice warmth to this pinky area over all that area that we've just drawn in. And then back with the burnt umber, and it comes down, this dark bit comes down a little bit more into that ear, so I'm just going to blend it downwards a little bit more. And the warm grey 5 in that greyish tone to come through. Back over with the burnt umber. Okay. Hopefully you can see how we're starting to get that nice look to our ear. I'm just going to bring that burnt umber here as well. And my brown ochre along that tip. Right, as we come down this ear, we're getting quite a big fluffy patch of hair that we need to add in, as well as like a nice big section of fur. Actually, I feel like I've drawn this in a bit too low. That should be dark. Right, I realise what I've done, so don't worry, we're going to correct it. So get your burnt umber. I've just brought this a little bit too far down, so my burnt umber very lightly. Just going to bring it down this side of this ear. And it's going to be darker in here with the burnt umber. So you see, sometimes we misjudge placements of things, and that's fine. There's always a way to correct it. Right, so that's coming in here. So get your burnt ochre, sorry. And that's going to be a bit more orange down this side. Okay. That's fine. That's going to work out okay. Just going to take my ivory now, and I'm just going to map in this clump of fur so that I've got the correct placement within this ear. So just lift some of that graphite. So I was just going to make this, what was happening was we were about to make the ear a bit too long or large. And we can change that by just moving the placement of some of these clumps of fur. And again, I'm not worried if it's not exact to the reference photo. Right, okay. So, cinnamon. I'm going to get this clump of fur in because then we know where I'm working from. Again, following fur direction. This is why as well, you can see that I've done this little mistake or little oopsie as we're building the shape of the ear. So it's easier to correct at this point because we're just building up the shape of the ear. And it's how I've noticed that I was just going a bit too large with that ear. And then the light yellow ochre. Over the top there. And then my burnt ochre. Just gonna, because we're gonna start to bring in some of that orange tone. We get blending into her head. Okay, I will come back to this area, but we're gonna get this next bit drawn in. So just lift that graphite, the ivory. It's a base layer. Okay. So this area may not be exact to the reference photo because I'm bringing my ear a bit lower down than it is. Oh, we're a bit yellow. Sorry about that being really yellow. I really need to keep an eye on what this camera is doing. Right, so like I was saying, we may not be in the exact same positions, but it is fine. So I'm going to take my burnt umber. I've got a little darker patch of fur in here. And the warm grey too. Let me just moved up the ear a little bit so you can see hopefully a little better. Right, and then back to the burnt umber. And then I'm just gonna follow that burnt umber. So this is the area that may be slightly different to the reference photo, and it's fine. I'm not panicking. It's still gonna look like a fox's ear, and that's all that matters. Okay. Okay, so going in with my brown ochre, and again following that fur direction, so it's curving round and down this ear. And then I'm going to go over the top of that with my gold. And then back over with the brown ochre. And then making sure that I'm blending downwards into this ear, where we're then going to take the cinnamon up from that burnt umber and into that brown ochre area there. Back to the brown ochre. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm shifting between the pencils that have been used and blending over the tops of each one another. Back to the cinnamon, so that I get that nice seamless blend. And then my warm grey too. And then my burnt umber, I can just darken up that ear. Blend that downwards there. Okay. Going to take my gold again along this edge of the ear. Blend it outwards. So I'm not pressing hard with any of these layers. I'm just slowly building up those layers. And then the burnt ochre, because it's more of an orange tone than that yellowy brown of the brown ochre. Just going to take that brown ochre and just blend ever so gently into that area, back to the burnt ochre, blend it downwards. We then want warm grey too, in this little corner. Okay. Then I'm going to take my raw umber from that burnt umber area, blend it downwards. And then my copper, and this is just going to give that distinction between these areas. And the copper is going over that raw umber area. And then I'm going to take my ivory and just blend those areas. Back to my burnt umber, darken this little curve in the ear. And then we're going to take our burnt ochre as it comes down this ear. And then the light yellow ochre. Okay, so this is that little corner of the ear, which is, this area is in the correct place. It's just we brought that little marking a bit too far down, but it's fine. I'm going to take my warm grey 4, is it 4? 5? 4, warm grey 4 in this area. Blend it round. So we're getting that curve of that ear in nicely. And I'm going to bring it down here as well. I'm going to start building up some nice details in our ear soon. This is the cinnamon. Again, just over the top there. Okay, so you can see, if I move our little fox down, got an ear shape in, and yeah, it's looking really nice. Okay, going back to our burnt ochre, I'm just going to start bringing the detail back into this area, because I just kind of mapped this area in, so that we knew what was happening with our ear. So, burnt ochre. Blending that upwards and in this area as well. And then I'm going to take my light yellow ochre. Remember, no matter which area you're working in, and I say it all the time, follow your fur direction. And then the gold, but very, very lightly. I don't want this to be a big part of this part of the ear. Just very lightly. And then I'm going to take the beige red just to burnish and just lighten this area to more of a pinkish tone. Okay, back in with the ivory. Now, as we start to do the inside of this ear, which is going to be very soon, if you don't have the slice tool, how we did the whiskers on the cat, where we pressed really hard with the white pencil, you can do that. Take the burnt ochre, and that will allow you to create the white hairs going across this ear. I'm going to build up a load of tonal values within my ear, and then I'm going to use the slice tool over the top. Cinnamon. So just use whichever method you have available to yourself. And then the light yellow ochre. And then I'm going over the top of this with the warm grey too, because it's getting that warmer colour, the greyer colour, sorry. Now you'll notice we've not used any of the coal greys, and that's because it's a very warm toned animal. We'll probably be using the cooler greys within the white fur when we get to that point. Just going to take the burnt umber. Okay, so it's all about now working inside this ear. So we need to lift the graphite. And again, I'm just going to do it section by section to make it easier, because it looks complicated, but we can do it. So first up is the warm grey along this side of the ear. I'm going to take that warm grey one all the way up. Again, following the shape of that shape and fur direction as it comes up this side. And it's going to curve round here. Okay, and I'm going to bring in these longer clumps of fur as well with the warm grey one. And there's just that little section here, so there's quite long hair here, so use longer pencil strokes. And this will give us a little section to start working with for now. So I'm going to go over that with my ivory. Now, the reason that I didn't use the ivory first is I wanted that grey tone as a base layer. And then as I work on top of that grey, I'm still going to get the warm grey tone coming through. But this is like glazing that yellowy ivory tone over the top. So hopefully you can see that. Then I'm going to take my cinnamon, nice and sharp, and I'm just going to start to blend it outwards. And I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to just start blending that cinnamon. So all we're doing is just building up colour, following the fur direction. So it's going to start building up details, but we're not focusing on detail yet. We're focusing on tone and colours. Okay, and then the gold. Along here. Ever so lightly. So you can see we're just really starting to build up the fluffy ear. Then I'm going to take my warm grey 2, again over the top. Following that fur direction all the time. Okay. Right, I've just noticed as we've been doing this that I'm not happy with the blend along here. So I'm just taking my burnt ochre and I'm just going to very lightly bring some of that burnt ochre. So this is something you can do when you're just working on a piece. If you see anything, just get it done. If it's going to be something that's going to annoy you and you can't wait until the end to change it, get it drawn in now. And then the light yellow ochre. Again for this really yellow patch of fur that's going on. And then I'm going to take my cinnamon and make sure that I'm going underneath that fur. So I'm pulling that colour under. So I'm coming from the top and under to try and create that overlay of fur. And then my beige red, just to bring in a little bit more pinkness, not too much. Okay, I think I'm a little happier there now. Just going to take that light ochre, because I've got it in this part of the head. And also the cinnamon. Like so. Okay, so that I'm a lot happier with that section of the head. Just going to get the terracotta as well. Just to bring in a little bit more of this clumping effect with the fur. And just fading it out. So when I say I'm fading out, I'm using harder pressure when I'm where I press the paper and lift that pressure. So harder to light, harder to light. Okay, I'm a lot happier now. Right, so with this section of the ear, if you don't have the slice tool, use your white pencil and draw in some of these white hairs. So you'll be drawing in the white hairs coming across this ear and the white hairs coming into the ear. I am going to use the slice tool, so I'm not going to use my white pencil. Remember with the white pencil to press down really hard so that you make that mark on the paper. But because I'm not using the white pencil, I'm just going to take my warm grey 1 as a base layer. So once you've got your white pencil down, you can then add this colour in and it'll go right over the top of that white pencil. So this is warm grey 1. And I'm going to go over that with the ivory. Okay, right. I'm then going to take my Bistre. And again, I'm following that fur direction. And I'm just going to start bringing in some of this colour to this corner of the ear. Okay. And then over the top of that, I've got my raw umber. Just to bring in a little bit of that yellowish tinge. Remember, blend into those colours that we've used. So I'm just going to take like, oh, nearly dropped it. My yellow ochre again, just one corner of this ear. And then the brown, burnt ochre, sorry. And blend that into that Bistre and raw umber area here. So you can see it all blends really smoothly together. And then I'm taking my copper, and the copper's going to start being details. So you're going to leave gaps between your pencil strokes. You're going to follow the pencil, the fur direction with your pencil. And I'm using this copper to build up that detail. And I'm bringing it down this side of the ear as well and starting to build up detail. And then once I've added a layer of the copper, I'm going to go over that with the ivory to burnish. So remember, this is just to burnish the layers together. I'm just going to take my cinnamon. It's got a bit of a pinker tone along the edge of the ear here. Right. Okay. Okay, now that I've used that bistre within that ear, I just want to bring it down here a little bit. So I'm trying to make sure that my colours are staying consistent within the whole piece, and I thought this area was missing something, and it seems to be the bistre. Okay, just going to blend that outwards. Okay, I'm a lot happy with that. Just needed that little bit of colour. Right, so back to our ear. So warm grey one again as a base layer, and I'm just going to follow the shape of that bit of fur coming round. And then over the top of that fur, I'm going to use the gold this time. So I'm using the gold here because it's more of that yellowy tone. You could use the copper if you only have the copper, but the gold has that yellower tone. And then over the top of that with a warm grey too. Remember, I don't want it to look shiny, so I like to remove that metallic sheen, the bits of like glitter that you get with the warm greys. Okay, right, so now that I've added that bit in, I'm going to come in with my warm grey one as a base layer. And this is where we're going to start building up, for those of us that are using the slice tool, this is where we're going to start building up the layers, ready for us to use the slice tool over the top. And in over that base layer, we are going to use our kaput mortar. So I've got a nice sharp pencil, and I'm just going to start bringing in the kaput mortem, and I'm going over some of this burnt ochre area just to make sure that it looks like that hair is sort of in front of this purple area, kaput mortem area, sorry, and then bringing that down the ear. And I'm going to bring it up here and into around here. So I'm kind of following the shape of the ear, but remember, because I'm using the slice tool, I'm going to be able to create a lot of the direction with the slice tool. And again, bringing some of that pinky purple kaput mortem tone into the ear. Oops, sorry, I'm trying not to get that much of the shadow going across the piece for you. Little hints that kaput mortem coming through there. Okay, and then over the top of that with the cinnamon. So I know it's not the biggest piece that I'm drawing, but I'm still making sure I get a lot of colour, a lot of detail. Doesn't matter what size you work at, you can still create a lot of detail. You could probably miss a lot of this detail out if you're not me, but I like a lot of detail in my work. Okay, now I've got my Venetian Red. Over the top. So the more layers we add, the easier it's going to be to use the slice tool. And then I'm going to go over that again with a warm grey one. You can see there's lots of layers, and I'm going back over these areas because there's going to be some flyaway hairs there. I'm going to take my burnt ochre again, just going to bring that in. Okay, and then back to the warm grey one, and I'm just kind of mimicking some of these fur furry bits of fur. It's one way to describe it. But like you've got these clumps of fur that are a lot thicker or wiry. They're more wiry, I would say, in this inner ear. And then I'm just going to get my ivory because I need to extend this part of the ear. So back in with the ivory. This is where it blends into that fur. So we're going to go back to the Bistre like we did at this corner. And small pencil strokes. We are going to blend it into that whiter fur. Or the wiry fur in the inner ear. But just blending it outwards. You can see I'm light pressure and I'm doing several passes to build up the layers. And then we want the raw umber. Again, just doing like we did before. Making sure that it's all consistent. Okay, and then the cinnamon. And I'm just going to go over that with the ivory. And I'm going to bring in the burnt ochre again. I want a bit of more of that orangey tone. So you can do this as many layers as your paper will take. I know not everybody's using the Fabriano. That's fine. Just if you use light pressure, don't press too hard. Just do it as many layers as your paper will take. Back to the cinnamon down here. Okay, then the Bistre. And then once again, I'm going over that with the ivory. So the ivory is just my burnisher. So it's just burnishing this layers together. Right, so now I need to blend these areas together. So I'm going to take the raw umber. And this is in the areas where it's like underneath some of those curves. So I'm not going to cover the whole area with the raw umber. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to take the Caput Mortem over that raw umber. And you can see just how light my layers are. You can still see the grain of the paper. And that's fine. And bring it all the way down. Okay, and then over the top of that with the burnt umber, not across all of it, so in some of the areas where we've got that brownish tone, burnt umber. Okay, and then the cinnamon, which is just going to bring in that pink tone again. Right, and then I'm going to take my copper, again going across some of that here, and in here. So this is more of that brownish tone. This is what I'm going to use to blend these areas. Okay, then I'm taking the warm grey one again, and I'm going to go over the whole thing, including that area where I want that whiter fur. Okay, and then the cinnamon again. back to my kaput mortem. Right, we're getting there, we're building up the colour. So I've now got my Nougat. So again, this point of the ear is all about the colours, just building up layers and layers of colours. And you don't need to use as many colours as I do. I definitely like to use a lot within my work. Definitely don't need to use 3. Back to my Venetian Red. And then my warm grey one again. Again, I'm going over the whole area with a warm grey one. Harder pressure so that it's really burnishing and pushing that colour together. Right, I've now got my brown ochre, and this is going to sort of bring these 2 areas together. So brown ochre following the fur direction here of that white hair, and then blending into that ear. And then I'm going to take my gold for that yellowish tone again. Again, blending over the whole area. And then my ivory. Knock back that sheen. And just once again blend. Oh, sorry, you're not in focus. There you go. And just blend those colours together. Right, I just want to darken some of this up again, so I'm just going to get my burnt umber. So a lot of this I will probably darken again once I've removed some of the pigment with a slice tool, but I'm going to try and get enough darkness down now so there's not as much to do. And then back to the kaput mortem. I can feel there's a nice amount of layers on here because it's getting right buttery to draw on. Okay, and then my warm grey one. Actually, I'm going to take my cinnamon. I'm going to use the cinnamon to burnish, because that'll bring another layer of that pink tone in. Right, slice tool. So this is where I come in with a tool, and all I'm going to do is just start bringing in that fur. So I'm going to just lightly scrape away the fur detail. Just following the shapes that I can see. It doesn't need to be exact to the reference photo. It just needs to start bringing in some of that detail. Hopefully you can start to see that it's starting to bring in extra highlights, whisper hairs. I'm just going to bring in a few looser hairs there. Okay. Okay, right, now what I'm going to do is with my white, which is nice and sharp, I'm just going to go over some of those marks that I've made with a slice tool. And I'm pressing harder here, and it's just going to emphasise those marks. Okay, and then with the kaput mortem again, just going to darken in between some of those areas. With the gold again. So I'm just bringing back some of that detail. And up here with the gold. And then I'm just going to take my white again over where I've just drawn in with that gold. And the slice tool again, just want a little bit more random cutting over. So I'm just going to use really random lines here because the hair's really going to town in this ear. And then again, if I want to bring some of that white in, I can. Back to the caput mortem. Just define this edge a little bit more. Take the Bistre to define this edge up here. Like so. Right, and then I'm just going to take my warm grey 4, and with this I'm just going to highlight some of the little details, not very light pressure, along there, and again take that white and soften it out. And there, I think we've got an ear that I'm pretty happy with. Just got my burnt ochre, a bit more of an orange tone along here. Again, you can blend it into that white. I'm going to take the burnt umber, sorry, again. Just along that edge where I just want to really make it look like it's that darker tone. And yeah, the burnt, actually I'm going to take the terracotta. I've got a bit of an orangey tone going on here. Okay, so I think we're going to leave the tutorial here. I know we've not quite finished this ear, we've got a little bit more to go into it. But I think that's a good place to stop. We've got both ears in. And yeah, I'm happy with the progress that we've made so far. So if you've got any questions, don't forget to leave them down below, and I will see you in the next part. Bye everybody.